Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of the most famous must know coding interview questions out there, which is two sum. If you are preparing for technical interviews, specifically for global or remote positions where the interview is in English, you will almost certainly run into this problem or a variation of it. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Meta love using it to test your basic problem solving skills and code optimization. We are going to break it down step by step, starting with the simplest approach and write some clean type safe code. Let's get right into it. All right, so let's talk about the problem itself. The goal is actually quite straightforward, but it requires precision. You are given an array of integers, let's call it nums, and a single integer called target. Your mission is to find two different numbers within this array that, when added together, equal the target value. Once you find those two numbers, you don't need to return the numbers themselves. Instead, you must return their indices, that is, their position in the array. Here are a few important constraints to keep in mind during an interview. First, you can assume that each input would have exactly one solution, so you don't have to worry about cases where no answer exists. Second, you are not allowed to use the same element twice. In other words, you cannot add a number to itself to reach the target. Let's talk about a quick example that you can see in the image to make it crystal clear. If our array is 2, 7, 11, 15, and our target is 9, the answer would be 0 and 1. Because nums 1 plus nums 0 equals 9. I'm talking about the array indices, okay? Makes sense? Great. Let's jump into the code and see how we can solve this problem. First, I'm defining a public function called toSum. As you can see here, public function toSum. And it receives two parameters. The first one is an array of integers called nums. As you can see here, array nums. And the second parameter is an integer called target. And the return type is array. And this function will return an array, specifically the indices of the two numbers that add up to the target. And notice that I'm using strict type declarations. The input types are exactly defined. And the return type is explicitly set to array. This is very important in professional code bases. Now, before iterating through the array, I want to know how many elements we have. So I store the length of the array in a variable called length. Count and the count of nums and semicolon here. This prevents us from specifically and repeatedly calling the count function, as you can see here, inside the loop, which is cleaner and slightly more efficient. Now we start our first loop here for I equals 0 when I is smaller than length. Go and I plus plus. And the outer loop This is our outer loop because we need two loop to create our program working, to make it working. This outer loop selects the first number in the pair. The variable I, as you can see here, represents the index of the first element. We start from index 0 and continue until we reach the end of array. Inside the outer loop, as you can see, we create a second loop. And here I can say that I plus 1. Don't worry, I will explain that to you. And when j is smaller than length, j plus plus, and that's it. This loop selects the second number in the pair. Notice something very important here. J starts from I plus 1. This guarantees two things. One, we never use the same element twice. And two, we avoid checking duplicate pairs. This is very common interview details that candidates often miss. Now we can check the core condition of the problem. As you can see, we are using the if, and we are going to say that if nums I plus nums j is equal to target. So we have found our numbers and we can do some stuff here. So we add the two selected numbers, as you can see, nums I and nums j. If their sum is strictly equal to the target we have, and we are getting the target from this argument in our function, and we have found our solution if the target is equal to this stuff here. Notice I'm using the strict comparison operator, as you can see here, for maximum type safety. So you should consider this stuff in your coding. Now what we should do if the condition is true. Look at here. We return an array of I and j. Now why? If the condition is true, we immediately return the indices of two numbers we have. Okay? And that's exactly what the problem asks for. Not the value themselves, but their position in the array. So we should return the indices here. Now we need a return of an empty array here. Now why? If no pair is found, which theoretically shouldn't happen according to the problem constraints, we return an empty array here in our body function. This makes our function predictable and safe. This solution works perfectly, but it has a time complexity of O(n)(2) because we are using two nested loops. In coding interviews, this is usually the first solution you present. Then the interviewer will ask you that can you optimize this code, and that's where we move to the hash map approach with O(n) time complexity, and we will check that solution in the next video. So I will see you again. So make sure you don't miss the next video because we are going to optimize this solution and make it much more efficient.